Welcome back to the Extra Rep Podcast, guys. I'm Josh.
I'm Liam.
So today we're going to talk about 10 things that everyone thinks slows down fat loss, but actually doesn't. So really interesting here. Going to sort of bust a few myths. A few of these you might have heard of before. A few of them we might have covered before as well. But we sort of want to go through, I guess, the 10 biggest ones. And we're especially talking, the ones you see online on social media where everyone will try and, bully you almost into being like, oh, it's because of this, it's because of that. That's why you haven't lost weight. And then, of course, these same people seem to have a magical discount code for the magical supplement or, their method that is obviously going to fix it. So we want to give you guys a lot of nuance here about actually, understanding, that there are people online who will unfortunately try and sell you the dream to go through their special method to get paid. So we're here to debunk all that bullshit and actually get you in a position where you're actually losing fat, you're able to do it yourself. Of course, if you need help, you can contact us. But this is going to be giving you all the information because we want to do good in the world and we're not snake oil salesmen.
Well, I'll say we'll steel man their argument and we'll also provide a bit of like devil's advocate of like, look, some of these, they have some merit to it and you could look at both sides, right? So we'll try and explain that as well. Like some of them I don't think are all malicious in terms of the 10 that we're going to talk about. Like some of them could have some merit to it, but completely blown out of proportion.
Yeah, all about the context.
All about the context.
That's what we want to do is really, go through the context of all of these. So the first one we're going to talk about is eating after 6 p.m. So I'm sure a lot of you have heard, it's probably a bit of an age-old myth, and I hope a lot of you now are like, okay, I can definitely eat after 6 p.m. A lot of people think like if I eat after 6 p.m, okay, then all of a sudden whatever that is being used as is going to be just straight towards fat, right? And we know that it is your daily calories throughout the day that are going to determine fat loss, right? So again, some people might be fasting, they might be doing a different protocol. As long as you're getting in, your deficit calories throughout the day, week, and hitting your steps and whatever your plan is, you will be sweet. You're not going to gain any additional body fat from eating after 6 p.m. provided you're in a calorie deficit. Anything to add there?
Well, there's multiple things to add, right? I feel like people get guilt tripped into like just that specific time frame, and it's like, what if you get held back from work one time? What if the train's delayed and you can't get home? Like all this stuff, and then you think to yourself, oh well, you're just going to stress about, okay, well I can't eat too close to bed because then that'll affect my sleep and then that'll raise my resting heart rate and then that'll affect my fat loss the next day and my hormones will be out of whack, and you can stress yourself out from all the information and all that, where it's just like, look, you may have had a long day, you got home at 7:30, you had to cook dinner, so what? Eat your dinner. And as you mentioned, if it's within the calorie range of your daily calories, it's not going to make a difference.
And I think it's important to mention that even if you're having a day where it's like you've consumed a few too many calories, like it's not the end of the world, right? You can just go back in your deficit the next day. You're still probably going to get a good chunk of fat loss that week. And that is another thing that we'll sort of, talk about one meal ruining, absolutely everything as well. But I think that's, pretty easy to debunk that one. Next one we're going to talk about is carbohydrates. Everyone's favorite. We've harped on about this before. If you've listened to the podcast, you'll know, obviously, we're a big advocate of carbohydrates. But I think it's, like I said, interesting to give a nuance of people thinking that, it's these carbs, they're making you fat, they're no good. And then I'll ask people, I'll be like, okay, like what carbohydrates are making you fat, right? And they'll tell me, chips, burgers, pizza. And a lot of these carbs that people will demonize generally have just as much, if not more fat. So I think it's important to note that, people are demonizing carbs, but it's the combination of carbs and fats that generally makes something delicious, makes it easy to overeat on. And of course, the calories then will skyrocket as a result of that, which will probably take you out of a calorie deficit.
Try eating 100 grams of plain rice. Just try it. You're not going to be saying it's delicious.
And there was a study I remember where they got participants, same thing. They fed them plain white rice until they couldn't eat anymore. They go, no, I can't eat anymore. Then they whack some sweet chili sauce on the rice. They go, can you eat more? They started eating more.
Oh, yeah.
Because they added more sugar, more fat, more delicious. And again, and the body goes, okay. It sort of stuffs with the body's satiation signal. So if you're having, a primarily higher carbohydrate diet of, rice, potatoes, fruit, berries, all that sort of thing, you're probably going to find you're going to struggle to overeat on those things. Whereas if a lot of it's, a lot more processed stuff, we're talking, obviously more sugar, more, pizzas, burgers, things that are containing a lot of fats too. That's generally where this myth comes from. But again, like I said, carbs, super healthy. We talked about fiber in the last podcast. really good source of fiber with your carbohydrates as well. So it is something that, yeah, I think we really need to be conscious of. And maybe do you want to touch just on, obviously everyone, we want to use carbohydrates for most people, but if they have some gut issues, that is probably the only time where, you know, the nuance becomes a bit different in sort of, yeah, limiting them a bit more.
Well, it's not always necessarily gut issues, right? But going lower carb can help, because mainly people with gut issues have blood sugar dysregulation issues. They have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease or alcoholic fatty liver disease. So their pancreas, their liver can't actually metabolize certain glucose and produce it as well. So yeah, eating carbohydrates can be a bit of a nightmare for them. But it doesn't take long to reverse that, okay? It doesn't take long to reverse, say, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease or, you know, insulin resistance or anything. It doesn't take long at all to become metabolically healthy. There's studies out there that have shown like it happens within 3 weeks of like just a bit of movement and, you know, just a lower carb restrictive diet. Like our brain loves running on glucose. We love performing on glucose, like ATP cells, all that stuff. We love glucose, and carbohydrates are used as performance and fuel. I would argue if you've ever been on diets where you've eaten no carbs compared to being metabolically healthy, lifting weights, getting good night's sleep and eating 300 grams of carbs a day, it's night and day difference in terms of like your mood, how you look, how you feel, your appetite, all of that stuff.
Especially if you're weight training, like I said, you know, your carbs are going to just, you know, go and bind to all that glycogen. So you're actually going to probably feel fuller and look better as a result. So of course, like we said, guys, context is key, but that will dispel that myth for you.
Yeah.
Hormones, I think, is a really good one to sort of now go into. You got so many people now saying, you know, your hormones are imbalanced, this is happening, that's happening. And I want to go just on a quick side tangent because I saw something on social media this week, and I'm actually going to do a reel on it later this afternoon. But long story short was basically this lady was saying that, you know, my hormones are out of whack and I have a really slow metabolism, and that is why I can't lose weight. So they took her to the testing, you know, put her in the, was it doubly labeled water tub to test her actual metabolic rate. Came out, you know, absolutely no issues, right? And then she was reporting her food intake as well, saying she was eating, I think it was like 1,100 calories or something a day. And they'd actually worked out that she was eating 2,800 calories per day. So it is something that, yes, hormones, of course, can play a part, especially if you're female, can be probably a bit more of a, you know, going all over the place. But this person was female. And a lot of the time she'd just been married to that idea of like, oh, it must be my hormones, it must be this. And as soon as they've put her, you know, put her mind at ease and explained like, no, you're just eating too much of these foods, and she's reduced them, obviously with a healthy diet, then she lost like, it was like 8 stone in like 3 months or something, which I found really, really interesting.
And look, I feel for some of these people because it comes from a lack of education around obviously nutrition, calorie tracking stuff, but we look for like a label to be like, I'm doing all this hard work. I think I'm eating healthy, or I think I'm doing the right things, but I'm not seeing the results. So you look for a label of like, oh, it's just my genetics, or it's just my hormones, or it's the endocrine disrupting chemicals and all these other things. Like yes, like some of them do matter, right? But it's not the be all or end all. Like if you want to regulate your hormones, getting healthy and losing a good amount of body fat and building amount of lean muscle and eating good quality food is a really good pathway for that.
It's the best way to do it, isn't it?
It is the best way to do it.
Yeah.
So like if you're wondering why your hormones are out of whack, then actually get metabolically healthy and you'll be like really surprised on how much better, and you know, we can prove it and you can look at it through blood work, how much better you actually be.
Yeah, I think that's really good to just segue off to that. It's like people will think, like I said, it's everything else, it's my hormones, there's got to be an issue. But normally, like I said, when we look at their food diary, we look at things a lot more closely. They're probably just underreporting things and just not doing the right thing in terms of, like I said, creating a calorie deficit. And like I said, ladies with, you know, PCOS and endo and other sort of stuff, they generally will have to diet on lower calories. So that is unfortunate for you ladies, but that doesn't make fat loss impossible as well, and menopause and things like that.
It's also taking ownership, right? Like it's not your fault that you have this gut issue. It's not your fault that you have this condition, but it's your responsibility to do something about it, right? Yes, life might be a little bit harder for you. You might have to diet a little bit harder. You might have to be more restrictive, but it doesn't mean it can't be done.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we had broken metabolism, so that pretty much covers the seventh one we were going to go through as well, because again, your metabolism isn't broken. Metabolism and hormones can sort of go together because everyone thinks, yeah, they're sort of the same thing. But the next one we're going to talk about is not doing cardio. So a lot of people will think, oh, if I do too much cardio, you know, I'm going to burn myself out. And I think there's a both ends of the spectrum here. Some people say don't do any cardio, and then some people are just like, you need to run and walk 20,000 steps every day. So there needs to be a balance here. We need to look at our resting heart rate and go, okay, where's it sitting? A healthy level we know is around between 60 and 90 beats per minute. I generally like it to obviously be probably closer to 60 or under for more optimal health in your cardiovascular system. And this is going to be really, really useful when you're getting into a position of recovering from the gym. Like if you're doing a heavy weight training session, you're doing a couple of sets of squats, right? And you get to this third set and you rest 2 minutes, but after 2 minutes, you're still absolutely stuffed and absolutely gassed. Then you're not going to be able to get the adaptations out of the weight training. So we need to have a basic level of cardiovascular fitness, but we don't want to demonize it to do absolutely none or demonize it to do way too much. There's got to be a middle ground there as well.
Well, it's the exact same as weight training, right? It's like you can take it too far. You can do too much volume when it comes to weight training and burn yourself out. But with cardio, right, like people can get addicted to it because there's a thing called like a runner's high and certain endorphins. Like, you never feel good doing cardio, but you feel amazing after it. You feel this sense of accomplishment that you've done something hard. And then you've got like a lot more energy production and, people argue better nutrient partitioning and muscle protein synthesis and like all these things are true, right? But if you're running every single day to get that, and then you're trying to balance weight training on top of it, balancing working full time, balancing trying to get enough sleep, and then trying to balance like a tiny bit of a social life and some leisure time, then it's like, okay, this is where we can start to burn out.
Yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of you guys have probably seen it now with the rise of, the sort of, functional high rocks training where it's like you want to do cardio, but also weights. And it's like, don't get me wrong, that is fantastic to do for overall health, but there becomes a time again when you can push that way too far. And that's why you're seeing a lot of these people just like not recovering and, getting through long periods of having, some massive issues after doing this sort of stuff because they're training 6-7 days a week. They're trying to diet at the same time. They're doing all these things that are just leading their body to absolutely crash. But again, you've got to find that balance, guys, in terms of cardio. We need healthy cardiovascular system, but we also don't want to push that too far. That sort of leads us into, working out or not working out every day. So I think that is another thing that people will be like, I need to be in, like I said, be in the gym every day or not be in the gym every day. And again, it's just that magic Goldilocks zone. You can probably get, really good results 3 to 5 times a week in the gym, I would say. And if you want to add a couple of times to get that heart rate up cardio wise, I find that's like the Goldilocks zone. But again, everyone is going to be a little bit different depending on where they're starting and what they're doing, and also how they're recovering with their stress levels.
And also their time management. Like some people just don't have the time to be in the gym, 6 days a week. But at the same time, right, like I would argue you do have time to move every single day.
Sure.
Just because you work out 6 times a week doesn't mean Sunday you sit on the couch all day. Like you still need to at least move somewhat. Like don't go, okay, I've got 10,000 steps Monday to Saturday and then be like, sweet, I've earned my cheat meal for the Sunday. And then also I'm just going to sit down and binge watch a Netflix series and 8 hours have gone by and you haven't moved at all. And then the next day you start on the Monday and you're like, oh, that actually did a bit of damage because I've got all these issues of like some gut motility issues, some brain fog. I didn't get a good sleep last night because my body wasn't even tired. I didn't actually have a reason to sleep.
Yeah, it's funny. And like I tell a lot of clients, I say, I don't want one day of no movement, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, I understand that some days are going to be less, especially on the weekend if you want to chill out a bit more. But I always say, like, try and get some decent steps in, Of course, if the average is good throughout the week, awesome. If it's lower on the weekends, some people will be lower, some people will be higher, depending on what they're doing. But we don't want a day of absolutely no movement because you'll find, the earlier you can get up and just start moving, even if it's just going for a walk with the dog, family, getting a coffee, whatever it is, that's going to encourage you to do more movement throughout the day. And you'll find it's very easy. The more you move, the more you want to move. The more you don't move, the more you don't want to move. And then you're arguing with your partner over, who gets the door for the Uber Eats order at dinner time, and you haven't, you've done 500 steps throughout the day. So I think that is something that we really need to focus on as well, is just getting out and getting some general movement every day without going and running half a marathon every day.
General movement can offset a whole bunch of the other things that we've discussed on this podcast. Like if you're worried about carbs, if you move after eating them, you have way better insulin sensitivity and then nutrient partitioning. If you're worried about like not working out every single day, you don't have to work out, but you do need to move and say like walk it. And then also metabolism and hormones. Like if you're not moving at all, yeah, you're not going to be functioning the best.
Yeah, it's really interesting how, again, we can do on a whole another few podcasts on those sort of things, but moving back to Uber Eats, it's like that one bad day or one cheat meal is going to ruin your whole week. And I think, again, a lot of my clients have struggled with this in the past where it's, they'll have a meal that's off their plan or what they would consider as bad. And they'll be like, okay, well, I've ruined it now. They'll have that on the Friday night and then they'll let the weekend become a free-for-all. And you'll find over the course of, like, let's say we're creating a 1,000 calorie deficit over the week, right? That might dent, barely, 1,000 calories. 7,700 calories is about a kilo of body fat. Let's say they've gone 1,000 calories over. You think across the week, if we just had that meal and then got back onto our plan, that's 6,700 calories, you're still in a deficit. So you're still going to lose a substantial amount of body fat that week.
Yep.
But the problem is people think like, well, I've ruined it now. I'm 500 or 1,000 calories over in a day. And that leads them to be like, oh, well, I may as well, go 4,000 calories over and then another 4,000 on the Sunday. And that's where the issue leads to, where they come back Monday, nothing's changed. And then they're like, oh, okay, I'll try to tighten up even tighter. The calories go lower and that vicious cycle, starts continuing.
And this is where people see like one bad day or one bad meal becomes one bad week, when it's just like, no, in retrospect, you actually had a really good week. You maybe had like a slight, slip up of willpower because you were depleted at the end of the week, but it doesn't mean you've gone backwards. You disregard all the forwards you went on, all the good decisions you made, and then one bad decision, you just sit there and just feel like shit. Whereas you don't need to necessarily, like you can just learn from it and move on. And, if you've got a good coach in your corner and you're still tracking all the numbers, most likely you still progressed. But I will play devil's advocate here because there are absolutely some occasions where you can have, say, a birthday party and you've had 10 drinks plus the pizza that was there and the chips and everything, and you can completely destroy your weekly progress. Like, for example, I don't know if you remember this, I had some random delivery at my house.
Oh, yeah.
Someone ordered and this was on like a Monday night, someone ordered Domino's and it got delivered to my house. So when I went out for my morning walk the next morning, I was just sitting there. But I checked the receipt and it was like $37 worth. And it was like, I can't remember because I didn't add up the total calories, but it was like pizza, wings, all this stuff. And I was just like, this is borderline like 2,500 around there. And
I reckon more.
And look, this person, we're talking a Monday night here. Obviously, I don't know what the person was going through. It was 8 p.m. on a Monday night. The order was ordered. And it's just like, okay, Monday night, maybe you had a really bad day at work. But, if you're looking at starting off the week well, you just completely shat the bed.
And again, it's good. They could be sharing it and that. But it's like that pizza. Like, it's so easy to be like, okay, gets to Sunday night and you've done really well, right? Someone wants to go out for dinner, you go, oh yeah, let's go to a pizza restaurant. You have a whole large pizza to yourself. You probably have a couple of drinks with it, right? Easy to have a couple of cocktails. And it's like that alone is probably 3,000 to 4,000 calories, right? You share a tiramisu, it's like, your deficit is gone. That's 5,000 calories over.
Not even sharing it. Yeah. You're getting one.
yeah. But that's what I mean. Like, it's just so easy for these sort of things to add up as well. So that is the nuance to that as well. One isn't going to ruin it, but you do need to be careful of making that one meal, a couple of meals and really just blowing things out of the water. But I think that heads back to, like, a lot of people will say, because I've gotten older now, my metabolism slowed down, my resting metabolic rate has all slowed down, and that's the reason I can't lose weight. So I really want you to go into that a bit more, because I feel like they've done a lot of studies now to say, like, it's not really the case. It's just you've just started to move less as you've gotten older, really.
It could be that, or they're noticing the results of, multiple years of poor decision making and, not educating themselves. Like, I say that because, I've got a 40-year-old guy, Mike, and, bless his heart, he's been with me for years. We're doing really, really well. He's reversed his diabetes, all that stuff. But yeah, he was about 36, 37 when he came on board with me, and he mentioned, like, the reason why he came on board was because he was like, he remembers when he was 18 and he told himself he was gonna, go to the gym, make the change, all that stuff, because he knew the path he was going. But life just happens so quick, right? Time just goes on, and he realized after about almost 20 years, he just needs to do something about it.
Yeah.
And, now he's doing really well and done something about it. But this is the thing, right? Like, as you age, and if you've continued to make bad decisions, one, you get that panic of, you realize that, hey, maybe I'm running out a bit more time and mortality. But two, you realize things are becoming a lot harder. Like, yes, we do decline with age depending on your lifestyle. Like, we can't help it, certain brain decline, certain testosterone hormones and stuff like that, but especially if you're a male. But at the same time, it's minimal. Like, it really, really is minimal. Like, for example, I would argue that, you know, you and I in our 30s, well, I'm not 30 yet, but almost there, we are, I'd say, 5 times healthier than when we were 20.
Yeah, probably, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And like I said, it's the longer you leave it, you know, the longer it takes to reverse. So it's very easy to, once you finally get caught up with it, you might be in your 40s or your 50s and go like, oh, yeah, there's a massive issue here. And, you know, the issue isn't just from being too old. It's probably from going, 20, 30 years without understanding, calories or the education behind how to get healthier and fix up those things, which is why it feels so much harder, because you have so much more now, so much more of a longer journey to get back to that, I guess, optimal health, as opposed to when you were, 20, you could probably, reverse it probably a little bit quicker. But like I said, kids, family, job, it's very easy to just, let that go, put the priority on other people. And then it comes back to yourself, when you go, oh, okay, look at me, I really need to, start making a change. And it's a shame that, normally probably something would have to, happen with the health semi-severely for them to finally, make that change as well.
But I can also give the opposite example, right? Like, I knew a guy at my first gym I went to, his name was Danny, and he told me, like, because he was looking good, right? And he was a tall, skinny guy when he started, and then he started putting on some weight, and he was in his late 40s. And, he had, like, not the worst diet, but, he would love to get on the piss on the weekend and all that stuff, loved it and everything, but he's just like, he still progressed really well in his health. And he mentioned, he's like, I never touched a weight in my life for 45 years. And he's like, I can't believe it took me this long. Like, anyone who starts, they always regret not starting sooner.
Yeah, for sure.
And now he's just, semi-retired and just addicted, just, slave to the iron, just loves going in and just getting it done.
Yeah.
But, and there's a lot of people out there like that.
Yeah.
And they're like, shit, why did it take me so long to start, physically exercising?
Yeah. And I think that's funny, like a side tangent, like mental health would come into play as well, especially as you're getting older. Like if you can find something, mentally to keep you going, keep you set, especially with the weights room. I know a lot of people, they like to train by themselves because they're like, that's just my hour for me.
Yep.
And I think that's really important and something that is very underlooked as well, in terms of obviously just your health and fitness and getting stronger, getting healthier is the positive effect it's going to have on your mental health as well. The last thing we're going to cover is slow progress. So I think a lot of people will complain all the time and say, my progress is too slow. So I think there needs to be, again, depending on what you're doing, if you're thinking, like, let's say someone's 60 kilos, right? And I like to use the example of like a smaller female, because a lot of smaller females will probably obsess with the scales if they find they're not having the body composition they want. And they might say, I need to get down to 50, right? 50 might be completely unsustainable. And they're like, I need to lose a kilo a week, And you think if you did that for 20 weeks, you would be 40 kilos, like borderline anorexic, like things would not be working. So I think it is important that, yes, probably when you have more body fat, the scale becomes an important metric. But as you're getting closer towards that, that sort of, I guess, regular body weight, then that's when, body composition becomes such a bigger part in, how are you looking in your photos? Are you progressing in your training? Are you taking measurements? Are things changing in the right way? Because that's going to be such a much more motivating as well than just looking and getting your mental health dictated by a number on a scale every single morning.
Well, in terms of slow progress, right? Unfortunately, this is where we see social media play such a big role. Someone could have done 5 years natural transformation, 6 days a week, whatever, and people in the comments will be like, oh, did he even transform? I could have got those results in a year. And like, it could be into like genetics or this person's results or whatever. And it's just like,
it's so skewed now.
It's so skewed, and it's just people attacking each other. It's like, social media, like it ain't real life. That person, when they're at their most unflattering angle or bloated or whatever it may be, they're not uploading that photo.
Of course. Yeah. When they're at their absolute peak.
They're at their absolute best.
Best lighting, best everything.
Best lighting, or they're on holiday, and they've just dieted for 12 weeks for that holiday, and they got the perfect photo with the sunlight coming down, and just whatever it may be, right?
Or they're taking drugs, which is more than you think.
I mean, that one's one as well, and that one used to get me so bad, right? Because there'd be all these, typical stereosonic, all these ripped dudes shirtless, but they're all just drinking alcohol and everything. And I'm just like, what the fuck? Like, how?
Aren't you on gear?
How can you maintain that size and leanness while you're drinking and going out and stuff? And I'm like, I'm sitting here trying to get in that shape while sleeping 10 hours a night and eating chicken breast, broccoli, brown rice. Like, you know, it was 10 years ago, but I'm just like, you know, I thought I was so dedicated and I was like, what am I doing wrong?
Yeah. That's funny how, social media's got a lot of perception skewed, and unfortunately, there's a lot of people on drugs or have had cosmetic stuff done, especially like those influencers, which are like, you know, you'll look like me if you buy my program or do that. So I think, you know, especially when you're looking at progression and slow progress is fine, provided you're just comparing yourself to yourself. And I think
and it's still progress.
And muscle building is so slow as well. I don't think people realize, you know, especially with someone with fairly average genetics, it takes years to build, you know, appreciable muscle that you look at and go, oh, okay, yeah, you have put a bit of size on, but it is so much slower than you think. So I think that is, you know, the last thing we want to leave you with is that don't get discouraged if the progress is slow, because, you know, as you compound it, as you keep compounding it, it's going to get better and better. And, you know, it's just you against you at the end of the day.
Yeah. All the, like, compliments that I ever wanted in terms of, like, body composition stuff, I don't think I ever received until, like, 10 years into my journey or 11 years. And I heard that from one coach that I follow, mainly for anabolic advice and stuff. Not that I'm on it, but to help with clients and blood work and all that stuff. But he mentioned, he's just like, be natural for 10 years and you'll finally look like you lift, and then go from there. And I'm like, that's actually a good way of looking at it.
Yeah.
He's like, you won't look like you lift for 10 years. But once you do, then you can decide what you want to do. And I'm like, yeah, put 10 years under your belt of like consistent training and developing all those habits, then see if it's a genetic issue or, you know, all these other things.
Yeah, are you training hard enough? Are you doing all those things? Yeah, for a lot of people it is, unfortunately, that, you know, they're just not sticking with it for a long enough period of time.
They don't realize, like, 10 years, it is slow progress, but it's still progress, because I can speak 10 years later.
Mm-hmm. And I think when people start as well, say you're 40 kilos overweight, you're going to make much quicker progress than someone who's 5 kilos overweight, right?
Yeah.
You know, the body wants to get down and you'll be able to lose body fat quite rapidly. But as you sort of get towards that sort of goal weight, or where your body likes to sit, in terms of, like, you call it your set point, that's when, you know, these things start to slow down, and it is much more going into how you look, how you feel, your body composition, like I said, as opposed to, you know, just a number on the scale. So that's just a final point from us, guys, is slow progress is still good progress. And in some cases, it might be better than doing it too quickly, because you need to start learning, you know, why you made that progress and how it's working, as opposed to hitting a crash diet or a crazy amount of exercise for 8 weeks and then just going back to, you know, how you normally live your life. And then you haven't learned anything, and then you're just going to keep yo-yoing for the rest of your life, unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
Perfect, guys. I think that covers it all. So there are a few of those that I'm sure that we've been debunked, and a few that I'm sure you guys will have a bit of a think about as well when it comes to training and nutrition. But again, guys, if you need anything, you can contact me again at Action Fitness Nutrition on Instagram, or Liam at Coach Liam C. Murphy. But until next time, guys, we'll see you in the next podcast.
Thanks, guys.